Welcome, welcome, welcome to this edition of Sagionic 1027. We are so glad that you have decided to join us today, and I'm very eager to introduce you to our guest. But before I've officially introduced our guest, I would like to share with you a little bit about Sagionic. How did it come to be? So the word Sagion by itself is Greek. I'm Greek, and it means carriers of wisdom. The word Sagionic means movement by movement in time. So our desire here at Sagionic 1027 is, how do we take carriers of wisdom? How do we squeeze out of them wisdom, insight, a business mindset, how they functioned in professionalism, how they functioned in, steadfastness, discipline, not perfection, but how have they functioned in a manner that is worthy of, we want to know what you guys did. And so, with that, I would like to introduce to you the Dokkens. This is Steve and Mindy, and this beautiful couple has chosen to steward the Right Hand Ranch. Not for a year, not for 5 years, but they have chosen to establish the Right Hand Ranch. And so, Mr. and Mrs. Dokkens, I would like you to share with us a little bit about yourself for our viewers today. What is the ranch? Steve,
Right.
what is the ranch, Steve?
Well, the ranch is a therapeutic ranch that has been designed through God, our Father. God has called us to have a soft place for kids and families to land and find healing. Um, the Right Hand Ranch came from being at the right hand of the Father. Um, Mindy can explain that. Go ahead. Go ahead and,
Well, for some time, when we first got saved, we came into a healthy church atmosphere, and we were operating in our field of favor, and then we moved out into like a domestic mission, like being domestic missionaries, meaning we ran facilities in our local area in California, but in a training capacity for where we are now. It's hard to understand that when you're walking through it, that you're actually in a training ground, because you kind of think you've arrived at your final destination. But we were, domestic missionaries, and so in that time, we really came. While the Lord was always providing and teaching us, it felt as if we were consistently getting the left hand. And I say that to just say we weren't operating in the fullness of the field of favor, and we were having a lot of opposition, and we weren't in the full covering of a church, so we were taking a lot of hits. And so with that, when we moved into this ranch, and we had words of being transplanted like a pot and into our final soil, and out of the pot and into the soil. We really started to claim that field of favor again, and call out for God to favor us. And also, as we studied out the scripture, we found that it's the mighty right hand, and so that is really that saving power comes with the right hand. So being at the right hand of the Father. So that
Let's
was
pause.
really
We got to pause there for a second. We got to go back. We got to go back. We have to go back. This is important, okay?
yeah.
We need to go back to things didn't look so bright and chipper and like, oh, this is what we're called to do, without names. I need you to give us some examples of that. And what on earth, was inside of you that made you want to continue? So first, share some of the ouches, okay? And Steve's ouches, or do you need to go get a kid?
Nope. No, not at all. We are
Okay.
kids. So
Okay.
I'm
So,
going to give you, I'm going to start with
okay.
the prophetic word that I wrote in 2004.
Okay.
And it wasn't, when I wrote it, I didn't know that I was writing a prophetic word.
Okay.
I was writing a dream and then a big dream because
Okay.
somebody challenged me to dream big. And so I kind of have held on to this and pushed forward through my 17 years of walking with the Lord. I pushed forward with this ultimate goal in mind.
Okay.
So I'll let my husband read it because he likes to read this part because it's about him.
Okay.
I didn't know him yet.
Uh, uh, so February 13th, 2004, my dream. I would like to marry a handsome, hardworking, godly, sterling, committed, loving, strong family man of integrity. That would be me.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Uh, I would like to have another baby.
I had to.
My dream is to be a loving, giving, compassionate, selfless, well Bible verse, peace filled, joy filled mother and wife. I want a harmonious, loving, laughing, praying, happy home, a healthier and more intimate relationship with my daughter, Tesla. And then you turn it over and it says, my big dream. My big dream is to have a working farm ranch, to take in wards of the court, lost children, to give them a home, family environment, to witness healthy relationship and have a seed of faith planted. I want to homeschool my children.
Ugh. Where's my Kleenex?
So when I wrote this, when I'm sitting here reading this to you, it probably seems that's doable, right? Because I'm here. But when I wrote this, I was sleeping on my mom's couch in her apartment. And I was very far from owning any property or being marriage material, even really walking with the Lord in any real capacity. So when I say dream, it really does mean this is the dream. And then a big dream, it was very, it seemed unattainable. And so step by step, continually walking with the Lord, but also saying yes to each thing that He puts in front of us. Obviously, when we're led to say yes, but keep saying yes to the Lord because of those were our opportunities to really grow and stretch and train. And like you brought, I'll bring it back to where you asked the question because
Yeah.
this is what kept us driving forward.
Exactly. Exactly.
He married me, but he house sat my house before we got married, and he read my Bible and he read my dream before he married me. So he married me and he married my dream. And he's always said, "What do you say?"
It's my job to make their dreams come true.
And so we have another say. Go ahead.
We got to pause for a second. Oh, that's beautiful. How was that placed in you, Steve, as a man?
Well, I'm a dreamer, but I'm a selfless dreamer. So, with my family and my wife, uh, my dreams were basically are formed around their livelihood and their wants and their needs. I It was kind of cool. It was kind of cool. I was house sitting and I was going to read my Bible, and I thought, well, let me go out to my car, get my Bible, and I go, I don't need to because Mindy's is right here. So they were they weren't home, and I just got her Bible out, and this letter fell out. It was we were already God had already planned our life. We were going to be married. We knew sometime. We weren't married yet, and I read it, and I know that God has a big plan and a big dream, and our desires are so. It's always been not just this dream, but God's dream and His plan for our life has always been something that's really, um, really big for me. Even in the middle of I want to say that um, 10 years to the date that she wrote this letter, 10 years to the very date, we we were called out of the comforts of our home church and our community and everything we knew so far in our life that was safe in our relationship with God and reaching the lost. We were safe in the confines of our church, and God called us from there, and He had birthed something inside of us. About children and crossfire kids and kids caught in the crossfire. And we had been ministering to children and broken families. And then He just suddenly called us to 10 days to the date, 10 years to the date. He called us to steward over somebody else's dream and plan in a big foster ranch. And we said yes. And so we talked about pausing and talking about no names and the situations, and we don't want to point fingers because it was all God
That's right. That's right.
directing us to this point in our life. But we went for we went there so excited about the opportunity to that God had planned for us to do there, and so in the birthing of what God put inside of us, the experience was. How do I put it? It was it didn't work out, and it was crushing. It was almost destroyed us and made it. And really, like you said, what made you want to keep going?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was our faith, and it was like the vision, and it was what God planted in us that keeps us going because we wanted to quit numerous times, and because it didn't work out, we thought it was over, and we just bonded together as a family, and we said, let's just keep going. And so though it didn't work out, we got a lot of experience, and I believe prophetically, I don't have any sound thing except for what God has said to me. We went there for one reason, because the proprietors of this ranch had fostered kids for 40 years, and they had made a big
Wow.
difference in the kingdom of.
700
It was
boys
it was
Wow.
in our field.
it was a faith-based program, and I just truly believe that we went there so that they could pass the mantle to us. And they're still alive, and they're still we still speak with them and reach out to them for wisdom sometime. But when we left, we were really hurt and crushed, and in our
But we
journey.
did get a word there, and I just want to tap in because a lot of training happened there. We had a ton of
Mm-hmm.
training, and but what happened is we had a full identity in our original church, our home church, that was going through a split. So this was kind of part of our God's exit plan for us, as that church was disintegrating. This door opened for us. Um, but what happened was I would keep digging in my word because there was so much spiritual discontent. And so I read the whole book on it, and I just ate it up because we were there and I was in what I felt like the dream, but it was a shortcut to the dream. We had kind of taken a shortcut, and it was still a training ground. We had said yes to the Lord, but it was a shortcut. So for us to think it was the final destination was a little bit naive.
Okay.
Me,
Um,
that's me.
but so I dug in my word, and I dug in my word, and I told my husband, I said, we're like David when he goes to fight Goliath and they tell him to put on their armor and the armor doesn't fit and he throws it off and says, I don't need this. I can fight this giant on my own. But if he had tried to fight with that armor on, he would have been killed because he wouldn't have his full faculties of movement. And so we had this identity that was being put on us while we were getting the mantle, and all of these things were happening in the spirit. We were also under severe attack because of what we had stepped into, and we weren't quite, it wasn't our identity, it wasn't our full anointing. And And so they were trying to get us to fit in the confine of their identity. And there was this real struggle because we have our own identity, obviously, our own DNA, our own marriage that we're, our two strengths that we're bringing in. And so we really had to, we kind of, we likened it when we left. It was like we were running for our lives and the whole place felt like it was, imploding. It really wasn't, but in the spirit, that's what felt like
Well,
it was happening. We were packing up. We've been there 2 years and we helped a lot of kids. It helped our family. We learned a lot about ranching. We learned a lot. But through our journey, God has really taken me and my husband and really created the two become one. And so that was really part of the whole journey because we had been relying on the church to tell us what to do all the time, very obedient, listening to our leaders, which is wonderful. But we had now been called to step out and listen to the Lord. And so this was part of our training ground. And you're going to get it right sometimes and you're going to get it wrong sometimes, but we always had each other to hang on to the Lord. So all of these years of training, we have really become the two becoming one.
That's, and the visual the Lord gave me, gotta find something as to use, was this. Oh no, I want something different. I'm going to use these. He showed me this years ago. If you're on this platform right here, okay, and you're comfortable and nothing happens, you would stay there. Yeah. But you can't stay there because he needs you here. And if you stayed on that platform and you were comfortable, you would stay there. But you can't stay there because he needs you here. And it just keeps going up. And so there's much to be learned about, I call everything assignments. Okay, they're all assignments. That to learn about different assignments and how do you walk away from an assignment and see the full value of it without disintegrating or downplaying another. It's a process. It's a process. It doesn't happen right away because we're these physical, emotional, relational, circumstantial human beings, right? So I'm going to tap back over to Steve for a second. So in this other environment you were in before you landed here, what was placed inside of you, did it appear? It probably didn't, but I want you to share with men, okay, that you knew that wasn't the space because you weren't able to express the fullness of what you were called to do as a man over your family in the environment.
Well, hindsight is 2020. It's always 2020 when you look back.
Yep.
But going into things, sometimes you don't see them; you just have to feel them.
Okay.
And I would say that there's a deep calling inside of me that says, "This is what my testimony and how I came to Christ and the signs and wonders and the miracles that had happened in my life had put something inside of me that said there's something very big and grand that he wants me to do." And Mindy has the same calling, but our callings have became one. And so if I was to say that sometimes you have to just step off the edge, or you have to walk in faith. Even in this season in our life, we're on the faith walk. It's an invisible walk. We don't know where we're stepping. We don't know where we're going. And it says, I would say that sometimes I don't actually get the instinctual warning ahead of time, but when it happens, you have to say, something's not right, and you have to take the blinders off, and because we can, like you said, we can stay on that platform, and it's real easy to stay in the comfort of I know what's happening, or I know what's going to happen tomorrow. And honestly, in this walk and this calling, and to do or accomplish what God has called us to do, sometimes we don't actually know what the end looks like or what it's going to be. It's always like you use the things to go higher and higher and higher. And I always say that it's like climbing a mountain, and you have to climb the mountain, and you go through the trails, and you go through some brush and some briars and some quicksand and some mud, and then you get to a plateau somewhere on the mountain, and you can stop and take a breather, and then you can look back and see where God has brought you through, and you just keep pushing for that higher calling, but you never reach the top. If you reach the top, you probably you're not going to reach the top, but you just keep pushing for the higher and higher calling, and in that there comes a lot of lessons, and that's why I said hindsight is 2020. So sometimes you get to that plateau in life, and you're walking your journey with God, and helping kids and helping families, and molding and shaping your own children and your marriage and your life. It all kind of ties together, but you just keep saying yes and taking another step and taking another step. And so when you can get to that place, and sometimes you really need to look back and see all the stuff and the accomplishments. Like Mindy said, when she wrote this letter, 10 years to the date of us going there, it's 17 years later now. And now we've had these experiences, and we I want to use I want to say that previously our ministry was called Crossfire Kids, because what God birthed inside of us was called Crossfire Kids, because we were in the middle of the recovery ministry, and people that were their life, we're helping adults with the gospel to change and transform their life, and drug addiction and uh, prostitution, and just all that stuff that goes with that. And one day my wife looked at me, and we were the children pastors of the church and the recovery minister. So we would take care of all the children. And one day she had looked at me, and I was telling her about some adults. We were helping them change their life again in the revolving door. And she said, "I get it, honey, but the kids don't have a choice."
Ah.
So at that point in time, her heart for children, this letter, not just this letter, but her heart for children. She was the nursery director in the church, and we were working with the kids, and there was always uh, this heart for the children and the brokenness, that they didn't have a choice. And so we started to do voluntary placements and keeping kids out of the system. And but our line was giving children without a
Giving kids giving kids without a choice a voice, or
yes.
giving a voice to kids.
So that was in the early days, and
And I want to, can I just, I'm going to put
Yes.
a pin right there because
Yeah.
I will lose my thought. Uh, when you said what kept you going, and I want to be clear because this is good. And this has been our blueprint. It's very simple. This is the original letter. It's very terribly written, and it's very scribble scrabble-ish. But I can tell you 100%, after we left the Big Fancy Ranch, we went back to our home that we owned, and that's another miracle in itself, how we bought the home, and how when we bought the home I cried because I was so
oh
full
yeah,
of grief, because it was the ugliest home we looked at for 2 years. And then I went inside to the house, and I read this prophetic word, and I came running outside the day we closed,
that's
the
true.
day after we signed our closing documents, our escrow. I was so filled with grief because it was in a terrible neighborhood on a busy street with broken windows, and my husband, he can do it all, but it was just, I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. um, and so the next morning I woke up and I read these words, and I went running. My husband was leaving for work, and I went running out the front door, and I said, "Wait, you have to read this." And he was like, "Okay, she's happy. Like, this is good." He saw it, it's like, we're buying a home, we should be happy. And we read the word, and it said that that people will buy rundown homes in low income areas to rescue and recover women and children.
Oh
So that
God.
really became the banner for this house, because that was where our original Crossfire Kids was birthed, and we never saw it coming. We didn't see that chapter start, but that was the home it was birthed in. And so, and there's so many children that were connected to that home, and so many families that were touched. We did women and children getting their kids back from CPS in that home. We were in that, pastors lived in that home. We used it in any families, homeless families, any possible way. We did, straight foster care, any possible way that God asked us. We said yes. That was His home, 100%. And but what kept us going? There were times when so we left the big fancy ranch. We had to rent a room in that home because I had to kick people out to go rent a room in that home. And then I went home. I was filled with grief again. I was so filled with grief from leaving the big fancy ranch and being so, the plan not working out. And we went to go buy retail therapy for our kids at the Walmart because they were grief stricken. They had to leave their school that they went to. And we went to the Walmart, and all of our credit cards were maxed out because we had overextended ourselves to do this. And we had to walk out. We were so humiliated with, 10 years of sobriety and foster parents. And we had to walk out of the Walmart without the purchases for our kids that we spent 2 hours picking out to try to make them happy because our credit cards were maxed out. So we go back to rent our little home, and I'm getting somewhere. So give me 1 second.
I like stories. I like stories.
Messy. Like, ministry is messy. Following God is super messy.
Yeah.
It's not this little straight line of all these, like, there's signs, there's wonders, there are words, there's encouragement from people, there's encouragement from the Lord, there's encouragement from the Word, but it's also it's heart work. Yeah. It is really hard work. Our heart breaks when over our foster kids. Our hearts have been broken handfuls of times that we have literally had our hearts splayed before the Lord as we lose our kids, and we celebrate them going home. But where I'm going with this is, you said, what kept you hanging on? And got to a point when we left, we went to another door of ministry, and I don't want to get into that story, but I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I could hear my kids crying that I had lost, that had gone back home. I could hear kids crying that I had never met. And I would say, we have to start again. Like, we had wanted to quit. We want to shut our doors. We're going to just raise our kids. We're going to go get a 9 to 5. All these things. We're going to be in the box, the safe, secure box. We're getting back in the box, Lord. And I could hear these kids crying. And I would wake up heartbroken, and it was the Lord moving in my heart, stirring my heart, trying to say, I still need you in this capacity. I still need you warfaring for these kids. I still need you on the front lines as a family, to welcome these kids in, because they're still hurting kids. So it was between the Word, but it was also the Lord just moving on my heart, because not just my heart, but my husband is very gracious, and he will help me. I wake up and think, I can't stop thinking about this, this child. And I can't stop thinking about, and I can't explain it except in my heart was just utterly just God moving me.
And oh gosh, just it's beautiful. Thank you for how many times that you felt like your flesh was going to get ripped off of you, so that you could be encouragement to others. Now let's jump over to Steve for a second. So Steve, tell me. So clearly you didn't learn to be mechanically wood, electric engineer, whatever. You didn't just learn this last week.
No.
So tell us how in the years of growing up, you guys are at least in your 50s like me, okay? So tell us how in your 20s, 30s, 40s, tell how all of this in your work ethic has aided you where you are today.
Well, that's good.
That is a loaded question. have a testimony?
No, I don't know anything.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. For our viewers, you got to know something. I met Mindy in one setting shortly after 2000. And I remember holding her hands and I remember praying over her. And I was a wreck of tears as I prayed over her. I have prayed over her ever since. And so I am in awe, as our viewers will be, because I'm learning all of this firsthand as they are as well.
Mm.
Give your testimony. 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, we have 21 more minutes.
Hey, I think I can do this. I think I can do this. I think the Lord just gave it to me. So, in the beginning, when you prayed, you had said, you didn't know, but you had said about Steve's brokenness and his shards and his pieces that have been broken, and and how we were to take those and put them in a barrel that was burning in a homeless camp, and that God would take those and refine the pieces. And it's true. It's true. It's like God is the refiner. And so I would start by saying that uh, every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. And I'm a treasure out of darkness. Me and Mindy are both treasures out of darkness, and we were once living in darkness, and God's magnificent light came and had rescued us. So I spent many years in and out of prison, addicted to drugs and broken and living in on the dark side, um, names, places, and stuff. But spending a lot of time on the inside, you do get wisdom on the yard and making decisions and who you were, the BC and the ACD, the before Christ days and the after Christ days. Romans 8:28 says, "For all things work together for the good of those who love God and that are called according to His purpose." So it's not all the good things from the time you started to follow Christ. He takes all the stuff from your past and uses it for the good. And so many times, my wife says that my wisdom comes from the yard or from who I was in my last life,
Man.
in my previous life, the circumstances and the situations and the stuff. You say, well, this is how we dealt with it then. I mean, now obviously we deal with stuff Christ-like today, and we do stuff. We're not breaking the law and doing stuff like that. But the circumstances and the situations when you come across stuff in ministry and life is basically the same thing. It's human behavior. So that part aside, um, I'm a treasure out of darkness, and now I walk in the light. And through my life, I have learned to work and remodel and renovate houses. I've been a laborer, I've been a sheetrocker, I've been a framer, I've been a cement worker, I've been a plumber. I have done numerous learned a jack of all trades. Windows, not too much into roofs. Anyway, we don't have to get into the detail, but I have learned how to do a lot of stuff on houses and homes. Not much on landscaping and stuff like that, but when it comes from the foundation up, I know how to do a lot of stuff on houses. And so, like when we bought the house, I mean, the truth is, we had just looked at Mindy's dream house. uh, we were out of town. We were up here by North State where we live now, and we just stopped. And she always wants to look at houses, and we left. And she was like, "We could do this." And the next day they call us and say we're doing the walkthrough. Well, a friend of mine said, "Steve, you work on houses. Just buy the ugliest house you can find."
We did.
And it was in the bottom of the market where all the investors were buying everything up, and we were worth a lot of money. I mean, I didn't even think I'd ever be able to buy or own a house. I was like, I just entertained everybody and say, okay, but it happened, and we were approved, not for much money, but we got approved because I never ruined my credit with my past life. I was always locked up, and and, and Mindy had experienced life, but I
Yeah, but
had.
wait. That was called your credit was protected.
Yes, yes, yes. And I had managed to hold down the same job for years because I had got sober and clean, and I started following Christ and serving in the church and helping people. And we just keep saying yes to God, and He keeps taking care of us. It's how we got here.
Well,
17.
and his work ethic. I'm going to say both of us when we came to salvation and we began serving in our church ministry of recovery, we both served 24/7, and we were led by a man who served on Christmas because people were getting high on Christmas. He was out there ministering on Christmas. So we were raised with a ministry work ethic that always said yes. Now there's another side to that, and it's out of balance, and there's a burnout that you have to look at. But for us to go from the dark to the light, we needed 24/7.
That's right.
And so he always said yes. We were raised by a man who always said yes. And I would say 17 years later, we both work to say yes as often as we can. And so that is how we got here. That is truly the key to us sitting here. It's not because we're rich. It's not because we're have fancy jobs or rich parents or any type of anything. We have a rich father who owns a cattle on 1,000 Hill and the hill. And it's funny because that same father is my oldest daughter's father, and she now is ranching on 20,000 acres full time with her partner. Because God is laughing. We started on 100 acres and we thought we were so fancy, and God said, "Watch this." And he gave them 20,000 acres to steward over because he can't. It's just as for me, it's funny because that verse comes up, and I'm like, he just wants to show off. He's just showing off.
So I want to go back. I want to go back to the house construction really fast.
Yes.
When we bought our home, it was the ugliest house you could in the worst neighborhood, and God and my wife was crushed. She was totally. I'd never seen her so crushed. We hadn't been married for years at that time, but I had never seen her so unhappy and so crushed. And she went to bed that night, and I was on my way to work the next morning. I was like, "Well, are you going to be okay?" Because I didn't think she was going to be okay. She came running out of the house with this prophetic word about buying old, dilapidated, broke down houses and using them for God. And she says, "I'm okay." I said, "She's okay." So we were in a verbal contract, rent, lease to own with the guy who lived in the house. And we were like, "Okay, we're going to buy it." So God put everything together, and I took this old broken down house and turned it into to us it was a castle.
Wow.
And we remodeled it and renovated it and painted it, and it was just awesome, and but I want to say I was just really trying to go somewhere with this. It's the very same house that God gave. It was like this house was God's, and it belonged to Jesus, and we belonged to Jesus, and we got it. And then we got upside down. We were trying to carry both mortgages, and we was like, "Oh, we can't do this anymore. We have to choose one." And so we moved into it, and then God used it for 7 or 8 years for ministry full time when we launched out and we did stuff. But what I want to say is that even to the very end, we're sitting in this place now because we got so much equity off of that house when we sold it that we could actually,
because we kept saying yes to God.
Yeah,
That's right.
So you said about my construction and my skills, and so we don't ever know what God's going to do with our gifts and our talents, whether they're spiritual, gospel giving things, or whether they're actually our skills and our talents that God is our stuff that God has given us that He could use for His good.
And can I just say one more thing?
Yes, yeah.
Because I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget it. Because
Okay.
when we left the ranch and then we went home and got one room in our house, and then I cried and I watched crime shows and I was just broken. I mean, I just was broken. And these people came and knocked on our door, and they were a prayer team on my street. Imagine that. They came to pray with us. And this door opened that had kind of cracked a few months before, but it opened up for us. And we ended up moving into a very downtown urban area and living on a church property and birthing our nonprofit. And we're no longer a nonprofit. We run a for-profit business with dogs. I believe in for-profit. I'm not against nonprofits, but I believe that the Lord wants to bless us with profit, not just nonprofit. So we went to this church and we lived on it, and I can't tell you, it was one of the hardest times of my life, but the souls that were saved there and the connections that we got to have with some people that had passed on to heaven at that time in that season, it was such a wonderfully bittersweet time in our life. We would have never had the opportunities to save some of the kids that we got to work, that we got to literally pluck out of utter darkness and drop them into light. And the way that the Lord used us there was just incredible. But again, the warfare, the battling, not a lot of protection, not a lot of good solid leadership, and us clinging to each other. It's like the rope going out of the Rahab's window, that us hanging on the end of it, to each other. And
Yeah, look behind there.
Yeah, look behind me. What is that, Mindy? What is that?
It's that. What was I going to say?
It was about Lexi and the season. And
That was it. Because I didn't really know where this whole hour was going to go, but I do feel led to just say this right now. We had the nonprofit there, and we were coupled with the church. And all of that is fine. It's good. There was good things that happened there. But we started chasing the money.
We were surrounded by people
casting the vision. All of these things that people say, and there's nothing wrong with it, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. But in my heart, something changed. I would have conversations to people and think, well, I wonder if they can give. It was it got very twisted. And so my husband, there was our relationship was really being strained at that time, our marriage.
We were not in agreement.
And we were not, things were not always healthy. I'll say that to be polite to both of us. But I told him, I said, we are chasing the money. We're chasing the money. We're not chasing the souls. We are not chasing our dream. We are not just doing what's in front of us and expecting God to provide what we need. We are out there just grasping. And so for us, that's really when we decided, when we came here to our ranch, I said, I won't do a nonprofit. Not right now. I'm not saying never. But for now, that heart change was very, in my own heart, was very obvious, because I was constantly going to have these meetings where I felt like I was begging for money. And I felt like, as cattle on 1,000 hills and all the hills, I shouldn't be having here begging for bread. It says in the Bible, I don't have to beg for bread. So if I'm doing God's work, he should be out before me, making a way financially.
That's right.
And, and professionally, correct?
That's right.
So we consciously said, oh no, I'm having a for-profit business, and God is going to continue to provide for his business, because he's our CEO, and we talk with him. And so, I'm not saying we're always perfect and doing exactly what he wants, but so that's what I just wanted to touch on. And
let me just. So we were, Psalms 1 says to don't sit in any way. So we were in, what do you put it? We were in ministry with other people, and they were building. They had failed tremendously with their nonprofit, and so everything focused around trying to get money to launch. We went into partnership with another nonprofit, so every meeting, everything was about trying to get funding to fund this big thing. And one day my wife came to me and she said, honey, we have never done this. We've always just chased Jesus with our whole heart and let him provide everything we need. And so she got a word, and she didn't say the word right now, but she says, start casting your net and quit casting your vision. I don't know if that's exactly the way it came out, but but everybody was trying to cast their vision to get money. And she came to me one day, and through a process of a lot of elimination and a lot of stuff in our life, we had realized that we weren't in good soil, and we were surrounded by people that, though God had brought us there, we were surrounded by people that were moving in a total different direction than God wanted us to. And so
we went back home and we started casting our net again. And God just started blessing it. He just started blessing it. He just started blessing it. Put his hand, he's like, okay, this is it. You just start worrying about the souls. You just keep going after those kids. You keep rocking those babies. You keep, working with the social workers, being a light and encouraging the workers in the field, because that's, that's really where we minister. We minister to our social workers. We minister to our kids. We pray for our kids, pray for their parents and their families.
So let's think of this for a second. Okay, one second here. And no, I don't have a cold. You guys got me crying over here. It's so beautiful. Sister Shawn is as healthy could be. So if we think of the different platforms, okay, and remember when we were growing up, there was at the carnival, there was that one ride that you went on and it spun and then the floor would drop out. And because it was spinning so fast, your body stayed up against the wall. Remember that ride at the carnivals? Okay. So what if, we're just going to play a what if for a second. What if the previous platform is used and does help people to decide where they're going to go next, right? And so it was used, but when the Lord says your time here is up, that's when it began to be different, okay? Yes. For example, I, in my, straight out of my, when I first moved to California, my one pastor down there, I likened him to spiritual boot camp, right? Mm. So over the years, he's had many people that would come for a season, and he would teach them how to be these warriors, and then they would move on. But they had to move on, because if they didn't move on, then where would the growth be, right? And so I was thinking as you guys were speaking, I heard the word rainforest. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, Lord, why did you say rainforest, right? Because rainforest. He said, because I can only have certain people reign in certain environments. Mm-hmm. And so the Lord didn't want you to reign there because somebody else was already reigning there. So he needed to reposition you, to repurpose you, to fine-tune your purpose, so that you could reign and have dominion in the territory and the region in which he was sending you. Mm. And then there's a verse in the Bible that says, like Mindy keeps saying, we just kept giving him our yes, right? My terminology was, alls I know is I'm going to follow the Lord. Alls I know is I'm going to follow the Lord. Alls I know is I'm going to follow the Lord. And alls, A-L-L, yes, A-L-L, yes, that was mine. Alls I know is I'm going to follow the Lord, right? So this is beautiful because it says no one has left mother or father or brother or sister or vineyard for my name's sake. Not only will they be blessed in this life 100 times over, but in that which is to come. So the 100 times over, right? Look at what you guys have, because you chose to follow him, because you chose to say yes. And were these special environments or platform used to shave off and shed off on anything that would hinder you guys coming together as a ridiculous, immovable force as a couple? Then you get to go back and look, wow, all those wood shaving and the sanding and the, oh gosh, that hurts, the friction to get you guys to where you are. Because now, before me, I see a couple, I see a team that shall be a mentorship team for other couples to come. Like, for other couples to come, because there it is, like I see like this coaching mentorship team of the Dokkens, right?
Mm-hmm.
On Steve helping a man to see, brother, nothing will fulfill you more than you sowing into that. What does God put us together for? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That you get to lay on bed at night. Man, my hands are sore, but it was worth it, because look at my bride, look at her smile, look at all these kids. Right? We have now, before we started interviewing, we talked about it, but you didn't tell our viewers how many children have you guys been blessed to go through this. And kudos to you. Yeah, there's lots to talk about behind the scenes about different things. I'm excited. Share a little bit about the children.
Go.
We've had a total of 60 kids in our home in a matter of, my youngest daughter is 10, and we started in that one home when she was 1.5. So she's just about to turn 11. So 10 years, we've had 60 kids in our home. My kids, talk about raising kids to serve, because my two younger ones and my oldest, but my two younger ones that are 11 and 12, they have had children in their home for the last decade, and all kinds of children, and some have been wonderful, some have been heartbreaking, and some have been a happy goodbye. But they have learned. My youngest is a servant, 100%. She gets up to serve me. She just serves. She just wants to get anywhere and get anybody anything. She just loves to serve. I always say she could run my whole house, because she has been raised giving to kids. And I have a rule in my home: the youngest always wins. So when we have younger kids, the baby always gets what he wants, because you have to teach that. You've got kids coming in your home, and they're just raised in a different atmosphere, and so you have to teach them. My husband, they call me Mama Mindy's School of Manners, because we learn a lot of please and thank you. We do a lot of, just the basics here. He always says I'm firm but fair, because we're very good at drawing solid boundaries, because kids thrive in stability and solid boundaries. We have a set dinner time. We have a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My kids know they're going to eat, even though they are going to always ask. They know they're going to eat, and they're going to be full. And so 60 kids, and I would say 20 of those have been were the voluntary placements, and those were children that we literally, some of them we picked up from the host roll, we call it down there. Some of my kids, I literally had the parents call me when we were living in that lifestyle, say, "Come pick this baby up before I slam it into the wall. Come pick this baby up. I just got the program. I'm going back to prostituting, and I need you to pick her up. I'm done." And so, we have been able, the yeses have been, we've been really blessed to be used by God in such a huge capacity, to pick up a pregnant woman due to give birth any day behind a dumpster, and she was going to have a home birth, and be blessed enough to have that baby be born in a hospital and have her go on to raise that. I mean, just the honor of having, God use us in such a capacity to truly save vulnerable children and at-risk families has just been tremendous. I can't even take enough word to say how just our heart, and just in through all that, how it's cultivated our heart. And what do you want to say? 60 kids, you say 60, to me that doesn't even sound like a lot, as I see all these faces, and
I'm gonna go ahead and, I don't know how much time, but I really want to point out that one time I was driving to take a couple of our very, very special kids that were in our life. It was in that season when we weren't in agreement, but I was taking the kids, and when I said I used to be in prison and in jail, and it was really important for me to be on the roll call, to be, it's, if anybody knows what it is, the roll call is when you're accepted into a certain gang or affiliation in prison, and you're not rejected from that. So it was very important for my name to be on the roll call. And I had pulled over one time, and the Holy Spirit had spoke to me and said, "Steve, you're not on that roll call anymore." he says, "You're on my roll call in the book in my book," and he says, "But these kids, it's important that you get them put on my roll call." And so I want to say the 60 kids that there's more to us just meeting their needs and scraping their boo boos and helping them with their mental
Changing
illness
diapers.
and no, but it's more than the physical part of that. And every time a kid comes into our life, whether they stay or they go, they leave better off. But we pray over them and we lean them and we teach them about Jesus and we. It's just very, very important. And I was going to say something else, but that's oh, and then so we talk about 60 kids, but if I look back, hindsight is 2020, right? And if I look back, there's a lot of adults and a lot of people
That's right.
that when I married my wife, she had a life group full of women, and she met them every Friday. Every Friday, and she would minister them and disciple them and so I look and I see a lot of those girls and the people that were above us and leading us and I had a group of men and so I can look back, but it's not just that. There's so many parents and adults and not just the kids. It's the wholeness of family. I think really our guide and our goal is to help these kids and the brokenness and the kids that that didn't have a choice and they got caught up in this life and it just is we're passionate about it, but it's so purposeful to help those kids. But in that there's also it's there's nothing more than like we had when we first moved here, our first placement, they got placed back with their mother on Mother's Day. And
Ah,
good mom.
Thank
And
you. I'm
yeah,
gonna.
yeah.
This is the two become one. Um, and I want to say we had one of our original statements were strong families create strong communities, which create a strong nation. And so, as a nation breaks down and the family breaks down, and one of the things that we're seeing here in California, we as a family made a conscious decision to stay in California because there's a huge exodus, as we all know. And God doubled down. We doubled down with God, and He doubled down with us financially. But I can tell you, we made a conscious decision. I looked at my two kids that are now 10 and 12, and I said, we can adopt, or we can move. We can, put it, shift it back a little, and just kind of be on cruise control, or we can stand because I don't know if people know. There's everyone's leaving California. Our foster families, our conservative families, our strong Christian families. In California, everybody has negative things to say about us, but we have families being crushed by this economy. We have children coming into foster care by the droves. I can tell you that we are getting calls for kids. I mean, kids, calls that you can place in your sleep in a regular economy. But in this economy, with the lack of foster parents, these kids are not having families to go to. So my family, my kids included, when we make a decision, we make a family decision. We sit down and we look at my two kids. What do you want to do? We all said we had we had an opportunity. We passed it up. My kid said, "I want to keep doing emergency care, mom. I want to keep being on the front lines, mom. I want to keep helping kids when they need us the most, mom." And because we have 60 kids, I say this, we are a family that is in favor of reunification. Don't get it wrong. We do get our little hearts in. Sometimes we tug war and say, "Oh, I could keep this one. Oh, God, we could look at it if we just, this could be adoption." I'm not against adoption. We need adoptive families. But we really, reunification families are hard to find because we pray for that family unit to be strengthened by the services so those kids can be back in their birthright family with that inheritance that they have coming.
oh
So
my
that is
gosh,
that
I'm
is
a wreck over here.
that is how you get 60 kids though. You have to keep saying goodbye. And everybody says, "How do you keep saying goodbye?" I said, "Because I know I have another amazing yes coming along. I know when I
Ah,
shut that door on one of my kids and I say goodbye and it hurts and it's hard to give them back to their parents because they're still pretty messy and oh my goodness, all that work I put in is gonna be undone. But you know what? the next one through that door, I imagine, what if I never got to meet you? What if you never made it through my door because I held so tight and I struggled with God and I didn't want to let go? And I missed out on one of my yeses. I missed out on one of my new hellos.
That's a huge, huge, huge factor there, you know. And it made me think of last week I interviewed a gentleman, David Wright, and he is the president of the Dale Carnegie Institute in Texas. And he said two things on this interview. David Wright, he said two things. He said, one, there's nothing that is harder to see than a human who is not living up to his potential. The other thing he said is there's nothing harder to see than somebody who is, I'm depressed, I'm in doom, I'm in gloom, I just need to come home and take a bath and pamper self and think about self and drink wine and medicate self and think about self. He goes, no, there's nothing satisfying in that. And so to see that the Dokkens have walked out pouring into others, that now their children are saying they've experienced the joy, because truth be told, Jesus came to serve and not to be served, right? And so when you're in the midst of serving and pouring, it is like, you know, you're not serving and pouring from your own cistern of self. You're being fueled up because you're his hands, you're his mouth, you're his eyes, you're his ears, and you're his feet in the flesh. And the word of God became flesh and dwelt among them. So you guys are going to be, we don't have to play repeat offenders. You will be repeat visitors on this channel, because as time continues to move forward, man, I'm a wreck of tears over here. Whosoever is faithful in the little, he will make ruler over much. I'm so, I'm looking at a miracle of somebody that I prayed over. And I didn't know all these details, and I'm just in awe. And so can you physically communicate to us, because this will all be notated in the description on your YouTube video, but can you physically tell us, for those who want to write stuff down, how could people get in contact with you if they wanted to be involved behind the scenes with the Right Hand Ranch?
Really, Facebook is probably your best way to get in contact with me. I have Instagram and Facebook. I'm Mindy Dokken, MindyDokken. I think we're on I think we have a Facebook for Right Hand Ranch, but I generally do everything out of my personal account. So
okay, and so if they reached out to MindyDokken, right?
Yep.
They would be able to find contact information there. And
Absolutely.
then behind the scene, if people were to inquire of me, I could give them an email address, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
You can even Mindy Dokken at yahoo.com.
There you go. Mindy Dokken, Dokken at yahoo.com. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And so I just, again, my heart is just bursting with gratefulness that you didn't say, no, we are not doing this, Lord. This is not worth it. We want the easier life. I just thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you, because that is 60 new homes in the world that will be changed because the love of a mother and father that was poured over them.
Yeah.
So I thank you all for joining us on this episode of Sagionic 1027. I almost lost my words because I'm emotional wreck over here in a good way. But until our next episode of Sagionic, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon me. Blessings. Bye.